The duration 2 minutes 15 seconds, 59.5 meters. Acceleration is at 0.45. KDU parameters are nominal. Copy.
Halfway through the burn, everything looking good.
2.5 minutes, 67 meters. Acceleration 0.45. KDU parameters are nominal. Copy. And we have passed the time tag, 3 minutes, 80.7 meters per second. Acceleration is at 0.46.
The Soyuz vehicle now committed to deorbit.
3 minutes, 15 seconds, 87 meters. Acceleration 0.46. KDU parameters are nominal. Copy. 3.5 minutes, 94.5 meters per second. Acceleration is at 0.46. Copy. Three minutes, 45 seconds.
Less than 1 minute to go for the deorbit burn. Everything looking good.
0.47. KDU parameters are nominal. Copy. 4 minutes. Burn duration of 4 minutes. 8.8 meters per second. Acceleration is 0.47. 4 minutes, 15 seconds, 14.3 meters per second, acceleration 0.47, KDU parameters are nominal. Copy.
About 20 seconds to go, standing by for engine shutdown.
4.5 minutes, 1 to 1.9 meters per second, acceleration is 0.47, standing by for cutoff command. GK command has been executed at 13:11:03. Copy.
And the deorbit burn is complete and nominal. A perfect deorbit burn. Nick Hague and Alexei Ovchinin heading home, completing an odyssey that began almost a year ago with a launch abort from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, culminating with a 203-day mission on board the orbital outpost at the International Space Station. Hezaa Ali Al-Mansouri completing a pathfinding mission for the United Arab Emirates. Touchdown in Kazakhstan on a desolate steppe to the southeast of the town of Zhezkazgan, now 48 minutes from now.
What about SA pressure? The SA pressure is stable at 769. Copy. 769. We have switched to page 56. Copy. No later than 13:28:12. Helmets will be sealed and KSS rescue aid system will be activated. Yes, that's affirmative.
Continuing to receive views from truss cameras on the International Space Station of the Soyuz MS-12. The deorbit burn was perfectly normal. The crew heading home, soon to drop out of orbit for its high-speed entry back into the Earth's atmosphere. The upper portion of the vehicle, the orbital module, that's the bulbous section at the very top of the Soyuz, has been depressurized, setting the stage for the pyrotechnic separation of the three sections of the Soyuz coming up at 5:34 a.m. Central Time.
Your harness belt. Copy. Not right now, but once you start feeling the G load.
At the landing site, preparations are underway for the arrival of the Soyuz MS-12 and the 3 crew members. There are a dozen Russian Mi-8 helicopters, part of the Rosaviat's search and recovery forces with NASA personnel on board that are airborne, having taken off several minutes ago from the airfield in Zhezkazgan for the landing site, some 92 miles to the southeast of Zhezkazgan. And as mentioned earlier, an Antonov fixed-wing aircraft will be serving as a flying command and control vehicle, basically a command and control relay center that will enable voice and telemetry from the Soyuz to be relayed to the Russian flight control team that you see there in the Russian flight control room in Korolyov.
Hezaع, we're going to fly over the Emirates again. That's right.
Alexei Ovchinin on board the Soyuz telling Hezaع Ali al-Mansouri of the United Arab Emirates, who's seated to his right as board engineer number 2, that the Soyuz will be flying almost directly over the United Arab Emirates on this final path that will take the Soyuz to its landing site in Kazakhstan. Touchdown expected about 42 minutes from now. Module separation about 17 minutes from now. This is Mission Control Houston. Just to recap, the Soyuz MS-12 is in the process of departing from its orbit, having completed a 4-minute, 42-second deorbit burn, a retrograde firing of its main engine to slow its velocity down to the point where the tug of Earth's gravity will pull it back into the Earth's atmosphere. Touchdown is expected just under 40 minutes from now at a landing site to the southeast of Zhezkazgan on a remote steppe, a desolate area of Kazakhstan, where Soyuz vehicles will typically land these days. The Russian search and recovery forces are fanned out across the area. Russian Mi-8 helicopters are airborne, headed for the landing site. Russian personnel, some of which are already in the vicinity of the landing site, poised for the arrival of the Soyuz vehicle under its main parachute, and the touchdown and the end of this mission for Alexei Ovchinin, Nick Hague, and Hezaع Ali al-Mansouri. Expedition 61 underway aboard the International Space Station under the command of European Space Agency astronaut Luca Parmitano, joined by Russian cosmonauts Alexander Skvortsov and Oleg Skripochka, and NASA astronauts Drew Morgan, Jessica Meir, and Christina Cook. This is about the point where the Soyuz is too far away from the International Space Station for the geometry of antennas on the vehicles to maintain VHF voice communications. This is totally expected and is common for a Soyuz descent, where communications may be lost altogether or at very best would become choppy until it approaches the landing site and reestablishes communications through the Antonov command and control flying aircraft. This is Mission Control Houston. Once again, the Soyuz MS-12 is about to re-enter the Earth's atmosphere following its deorbit burn to enable it to drop out of orbit for its high-speed return back to Earth. The next major event is the pyrotechnic separation of the 3 sections of the Soyuz, scheduled at 5:34 a.m. Central Time. That will be followed just 4 minutes later by the vehicle entering into the plasma regime, in which temperatures around the Soyuz will build to about 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit. Its heat shield ablating and repelling that buildup of plasma around the vehicle. As we've mentioned several times before, but it's worth mentioning again, this is the point at which communications are either choppy or lost altogether because of the distance of the Soyuz from the International Space Station, where communications antennas no longer can relay voice or telemetry for a period of time. This plasma regime that will begin about 5:38 a.m. Central Time will last for about 5 minutes before the Soyuz.
Remaining until separation. Moscow did not copy your last. Could you please repeat your last? 10 minutes remaining until separation. Copy and confirm.
And there we have communications again with the Soyuz as Alexei Ovchinin looks at the timers on his telemetry display in the Soyuz in the descent module. About 10 minutes away from module separation, he confirmed. Once the vehicle exits the plasma regime at about 5:43 a.m. Central Time, we at that point will be about 2 minutes away from the command to open up parachutes.
6 minutes to module separation. You have to put KSS rescue aids in active mode and standby mode, and please depress push to talk buttons and transmit button. And please provide running commentary by pressing push to talk button without holding it down. So the helmets now? Yes. Okay, it's still that for FE1. This is Hezaع. My helmet is also closed. Copy. Okay.
This is Mission Control Houston, some 31 minutes away from the expected touchdown of the Soyuz MS-12 on the south-central steppe of Kazakhstan.
Moscow, this is Burlak 1. We copy you loud and clear. The helmets are closed. The KSS rescue aids are activated, and the push-to-talk button is released. And we are standing by for the time 13:31:12. It's separation time minus 3 minutes. Copy. Buрлаки, around 13:43, there might be VHF pass via our stations, and after the plasma re-entry, after the plasma exit at 13:43. How copy?
Вас приняли, 13:43.
13:43, we might have come at this time. That's affirmed.
Bonus communications between the Russian flight controllers in Korolyov and Alexei Ovchinin on board the Soyuz MS-12. We're about 4 minutes away from the anticipated pyrotechnic separation of the three sections of the Soyuz vehicle.
Via VSK, what is your evaluation? It's complicated. The angle is 180 and 0. Copy.
Less than 3 minutes away from the anticipated separation of the three sections of the Soyuz vehicle. That will leave the descent module with the crew strapped in their seats on board, with the heat shield facing the direction of travel to repel temperatures that will build up shortly to about 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit as they enter into the so-called plasma regime.
Buрлаки, would you please confirm that the separation program has started? Yes, we confirm, and we also have controlled descent. Copy. Buрлаки, 1 minute until separation.
Just over 26 minutes until landing. Everything continuing to go by the book as we stand by for confirmation of module separation.
30 seconds until separation. Buрлаки, this is Moscow. Inaudible. 10 seconds until separation.
Russian flight controllers confirming a good module separation right on time, 25 minutes until touchdown. All the milestones for the Soyuz's entry back to Earth continuing to tick off in trip hammer fashion, everything looking good. Vehicle systems reported to be in excellent shape.
Бурлаки 2 minutes until the re-entry.
The continuing communications with the crew, which we received in serendipitous fashion, about to be lost as they enter into the plasma regime, where the buildup of heat around the vehicle likely will prevent communications for several minutes until they exit that period of the entry prior to the command to deploy the parachutes. The chute deployment sequence, 2 pilot parachutes are first deployed, the second of which extracts the drogue chute. The drogue chute, once it is released, it measures 24 square meters, slowing the Soyuz down from a descent rate of 230 meters per second to just 80 meters per second. That in turn will release the main parachute covering an area of 1,000 meters. It's a huge parachute, slowing the Soyuz to a descent rate of 7.2 meters per second. The harnesses attached with the Soyuz first allow the Soyuz to descend at an angle of about 30 degrees to expel residual heat from its journey through the plasma regime, then shifts the Soyuz to a straight vertical descent to enable the altimeter on the heat shield that will be jettisoned to pick up rate of descent and distance to the ground for the computers to have its information updated for the soft landing engines to be fired.
Inaudible.
The Soyuz now in the plasma regime. Once again, this is where controlled entry guidance begins, also the time in which the temperature around the Soyuz builds, with the heat being ablated by the heat shield at the bottom of the spacecraft. The descent module, Alexei Ovchinin, the Soyuz commander, in the center seat, flanked to his left by NASA astronaut Nick Hague, to his right by Hezaa Ali Al-Mansouri, the visiting astronaut from the United Arab Emirates. The Russian Mi-8 helicopters, part of the search and recovery forces, now in the vicinity of the landing site, beginning a pattern of an oval-shaped circular pattern of flight around the expected trajectory of the Soyuz under its main parachute once it's deployed. The Soyuz continues to barrel its way toward the landing site. We are about 4 minutes away from the expected deployment of the parachutes. "17 minutes until touchdown. Again, we are in a period of a loss of communications with the Soyuz vehicle. Once it exits the plasma regime, communications should be restored through the Antonov fixed-wing aircraft that's operating as a flying command and control center, relaying information, data, and voice back to the Russian mission control team in Korolyov. You see that team gathered at their consoles from this balcony camera.
How do you copy us? G-load 428. The integral is plus 13 over the curve. Copy, Burlaki. So what is the miss? 1 second. And what about SR pressure? 770. How are you feeling, guys? We are feeling well. Copy.
Communications restored with the Soyuz MS-12 almost to the second, and again that familiar beacon that's sending signals to the search and recovery forces at the landing site.
What was maximum G-load? 4.3. Copy. The maximum G-load was 4.3. We confirm. Standing by for the OSP deploy, parachute deploy. So we are entering the atmosphere. We can feel that.
That call from Alexei Ovchinin aboard the Soyuz MS-12 indicating that the crew is now feeling the tug of gravity. For Ovchinin and Nick Hague, their first sensation of gravity in 203 days. Soyuz heading toward the landing site under controlled entry. The crew reported pulling a maximum of 4.5 Gs.
Unintelligible.
And there's our first view of the Soyuz MS-12 under its main parachute. The venting that you're seeing, valves have been opened to vent hydrogen peroxide fuel for the entry control thrusters and oxygen in the life support system tank. This is a combination of hydrogen peroxide and oxygen escaping into the atmosphere to safe the Soyuz spacecraft for landing so that no hazardous gases remain in the vehicle's tanks when the soft landing engines fire a few seconds before touchdown. This is a normal occurrence at an altitude of some 18,000 feet. A cloudless day over south-central Kazakhstan to greet Nick Hague, Alexei Ovchinin, and Hezza'a Ali al-Mansouri. Russian Mi-8 helicopters, part of the Rosaviatsa search and recovery forces, are also circling the area around the Soyuz spacecraft. A good view of the Soyuz. Again, and there's the jettisoning of the heat shield. This exposes the altimeter. Inside 10 minutes until touchdown, a great view of the Soyuz MS-12 from cameras at the landing site about 92 miles to the southeast of the town of Jezkazgan. Everything has proceeded in perfect fashion for Haig, Ovchinin, and Al-Mansouri, who are just minutes away from completing their respective missions.
Unintelligible.
About 8 minutes until touchdown, everything proceeding normally. The crew reporting it is in good shape. All of the events have unfolded in perfect fashion so far. Less than 6 minutes until touchdown. Everything is in great shape as you continue to watch the Soyuz descend under its main parachute, heading for the landing site in south central Kazakhstan, where the search and recovery forces are standing by to approach the vehicle after touchdown. They'll safe the vehicle and then begin the process of extracting the crew. The search and recovery forces have established communications with the crew on board the Soyuz MS-12, and they report they are feeling well. 2.5 minutes till touchdown. You're watching the methodical descent of the Soyuz MS-12 under its main parachute on a cloudless day in south central Kazakhstan. Temperatures around 62 degrees Fahrenheit at the landing site.
Unintelligible.
Just a few minutes away from the end of the mission for Haig, Ovchinin, and Al-Mansouri. Haig and Ovchinin wrapping up a journey of 86.1 million miles. Al-Mansouri wrapping up a 3.3 million mile mission over 8 days. And you can see one of the Russian Mi-8 helicopters, so we are approaching the moment of touchdown. Touchdown, right on the money, at 5:59 a.m. Central Time, 6:59 a.m. Eastern Time, 4:59 p.m. at the landing site. The soft landing engines having fired, the main parachute now reefing. Nick Haig, Alexei Ovchinin, and Hezaa Ali Al-Mansouri are home. Russian Mi-8 helicopters circling in the vicinity. They'll be landing in sequential fashion, a dozen prime helicopters at the landing site. It appeared to be a bullseye touchdown for the crew members on board the Soyuz MS-12. Again, touchdown at 5:59 a.m. Central Time, 6:59 a.m. Eastern Time. To recap, the Soyuz MS-12 is back on Earth with its crew of Nick Haig, Alexei Ovchinin, and Hezaa Ali Al-Mansouri. Haig and Ovchinin wrapping up 203 days in space and aboard the International Space Station. Mansouri's 8-day mission at an end for the United Arab Emirates. Russian search and recovery helicopters are landing now in sequential fashion in the vicinity of the spacecraft. The first team of technical specialists will be safing the spacecraft and beginning the process of extracting the crew. This is Mission Control Houston. This view of the flight control room at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov outside of Moscow. The live television views that you've been enjoying watching the Soyuz MS-12 descend to its landing under its main parachute will be regaining a television view once the all-terrain vehicles that house the television equipment and the uplink satellite dish reposition themselves right at the capsule. So we should be getting that TV back shortly. A bullseye touchdown on time for Soyuz MS-12 and Haig, Ovchinin, and Al-Mansouri at 5:59 a.m. Central Time, 6:59 a.m. Eastern Time, 4:59 p.m. at the landing site in Kazakhstan, about an hour and 58 minutes prior to sunset. Russian Mi-8 helicopters, part of the search and recovery forces, and all-terrain vehicles at the landing site are making their way towards the Soyuz spacecraft to begin the process of safing the vehicle and extracting the crew. All of the events from hatch closure to undocking to the deorbit burn and all of the entry activities per the timeline went off without a hitch. It was a perfectly nominal entry and landing for Haig, Ovchinin, and Al-Mansouri. We are waiting to regain live television from the landing site where the Soyuz MS-12 touched down about 10 minutes ago. This is Mission Control Houston. The search and recovery force is now reporting that the Soyuz vehicle landed on its side. The RSC Energia personnel on the first couple of helicopters are on the scene and report that the crew is feeling well. This is Mission Control Houston, back with live video from the landing site. A look at Alexei Ovchinin. There is Hezzaw Ali al-Mansouri, the crew having been quickly extracted from the Soyuz vehicle that landed on its side 16 minutes ago at 5:59 a.m. Central Time, 6:59 a.m. Eastern Time. This is Mission Control Houston. All three crew members are now out of the Soyuz spacecraft in their chairs to get their land legs back for a short period of time before they're carried into the medical tent. On the scene is NASA Public Affairs Officer Gary Jordan. Gary, if you can hear me, give us a look-see at what's happening at the landing site.
Rob, it's a beautiful day out here at the landing site. Perfectly clear skies and sort of a brisk winds happening right now. But all the otherwise, a very good temperature for the crew. Now just coming out of the capsule, seated right in front for the first time, breathing fresh air from the Earth in 203 days. I was arrived just after Hezzaw Ali al-Mansouri was extracted. As you mentioned, they were extracted very quickly after the Soyuz did land. As you can see now, positioned on its side, and the crew members were extracted from there. Lots of personnel out here, as you can probably see. Everyone gathering to see the crew members who are now able to talk to their families. But a lot of excitement here that's surrounding the three crew members completing their journey after 203 days, coming back safe and sound here in the steppes of Kazakhstan on their Soyuz MS-12.
Gary, we are seeing Alexei Ovchinin at the moment. Give us a timeline, if you will, of activities from this point until the crew begins its return to Karaganda.
Well, it won't be very long after they are done talking to their families. You can see them positioned in seats right in front of the capsule. Very shortly from this moment, they'll be carried over to a medical tent, which, as you're looking at the crew members, is to the right. I would say probably about 50 yards to the right, so relatively close compared to some of the times I've seen the tent in the past. Once they're carried over to the medical tent, they'll be examined for their health and undergo a series of tests. Nick Hague and Hezzaw Ali al-Mansouri will undergo tests called standard measures, which are a subset of some of the field tests that we've seen before to test the astronauts' performance immediately after landing and getting adjusted back to Earth's gravity. Alexei Ovchinin will undergo the full field test, which is a longer series of tests, and that will carry them for at least more than an hour, if not more. The sun should be setting just around the time that those field tests are wrapped up and the tent is deconstructed, and some of the last helicopters will fly over to Karaganda. At the Karaganda airport, we'll have a short ceremony to celebrate the three crew members coming home now, and they'll be presented with gifts from there.
Commander is first.
Gary, it seemed as if the extraction of the crew, we did not see them extracted in real time, but it seemed like it went very quickly.
We encountered the same thing. We were able to actually visualize some portion of the landing. We were probably one of the middle helicopters to land. There was about probably 6 helicopters that had landed before us. But by the time we got down, Nick Hague and Alexei Ovchinin have both been extracted, and Hezzaw Ali al-Mansouri was extracted shortly thereafter. But you're right, they were extracted in a relatively quick time frame, and now it seems like they're already positioning themselves to carry the crew members over to the medical tent and proceed with some of those tests, including the standard measures test from the Human Research Program, as well as the field test.
And we've gotten a view of NASA astronaut Nick Hague seated to the left of Alexei Ovchinin, the same configuration that they were seated in for entry and landing. Pat Forrester, NASA's chief astronaut, is right by Nick's side. As usual, for all three crew members, medical personnel providing initial attention to the three crew members, but none of them looking worse for wear. So how long now before you expect the crew members and yourself, frankly, to be airborne back to Karaganda, Gary?
Well, the crew themselves, as I mentioned, some of those standard measures tests are just a shorter series of tests that should be wrapped up in about under an hour. But even now, you can see Alexei Ovchinin actually being carried to the medical tent, again, about 50 yards to the right of the crew members. He'll be the first. Nick Hague following shortly behind Alexei Ovchinin, and Hezaa Ali Al-Mansouri will take up the rear. Once those tests begin, those tests should wrap up in just under an hour. The field test itself for Alexei Ovchinin will be a little bit longer of a test, but it won't be long until after those tests completed that the flight back to Karaganda, which should just be a little under 3 hours, will proceed shortly after that.
Gary, it looks like everything is proceeding by the book, as was all of the entry milestones for this crew back home safely on Earth. We thank you for your reports from the landing site, and have a safe trip back to Karaganda and back to Houston.
Thank you, Rob, and as always, it's a pleasure to be part of these activities. You see people from all over the world come together to make this a possibility, and it really takes a team to make it a reality. Appreciate it.
Gary Jordan, NASA Public Affairs Officer at the landing site, as you see Hezaa Ali Al-Mansouri being carried by fellow personnel from the United Arab Emirates Space Agency. Al-Mansouri, the first Emirati citizen to fly in space, now entering the medical tent, where he, Hague, and Ovchinin will undergo medical tests, get out of their Russian Sokol launch and entry suits into more comfortable flight clothing. Once that all is completed, they will board individual helicopters for a 2-hour flight from the landing site back to Karaganda, the staging city, which is to the northeast of the landing site. The crew will split up at that point, with Ovchinin and Al-Mansouri flying back in a Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center aircraft to Star City, Russia, their training base outside of Moscow. Nick Hague will board a NASA Gulfstream jet for the flight back to Houston. And back in the International Space Station Flight Control Room here at the Johnson Space Center in Houston at Mission Control. We have been with you throughout the course of the night with the safe return of the 3 crew members from the International Space Station, astronaut Nick Hague, NASA astronaut, along with Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexei Ovchinin, and visiting astronaut Hezza Ali Al-Mansouri from the United Arab Emirates, back home safely, having landed at 5:59 a.m. Central Time, 6:59 a.m. Eastern Time. The Soyuz MS-12 had a perfect entry back to Earth. All of the undocking and entry milestones were achieved without any issues whatsoever. The vehicle landed on its side at the landing site, almost a bullseye touchdown, 92 miles to the southeast of the town of Jezkazgan. The crew was quickly extracted, the vehicle landing on its side, but the search and recovery personnel got to the vehicle very quickly, extracted the crew, and they're now in the medical tent, receiving their initial medical tests, getting out of their Sokol launch and entry suits into more comfortable clothing for helicopter flights back to the staging city of Karaganda, Kazakhstan. So with that, we'll wrap up our coverage for this morning. The Soyuz MS-12 and its crew safely back on Earth, mission accomplished. Thank you for joining us throughout the night. This is Mission Control Houston.